Andrew came up with bicycle face, which is a great example of fear of the future.
All technology has been met with some form of fear, anxiety, pushback. Bicycle face being a great example. So the story is that when they created bicycles, they tried to stop people from riding, particularly women. And so there was this whole campaign that came out that said, if you ride a bicycle, because of, the way the wind will blow you and you're moving forward, it's going to permanently leave your face in a state of bicycle face. And
it was to oppress women.
Yeah, it was to oppress women. Every technology is met with this, and I think AI is no exception.
Welcome to the Acid for Squares podcast. I'm your host, Tanya Dahl.
And I'm Cody Blue. And if you like what we're doing here, please like, subscribe, rate, comment, hit that notification button. It helps us out a lot. We appreciate it greatly. And on today's episode, we have our dear friends, Andrew Smith Lewis, who is a serial innovator and working at the intersection of AI and cognitive sciences. And we have, returning to the show, Paul Hynek, who is a professor, entrepreneur, and a futurist. Boys, thank you for being here. We appreciate you. Round of applause, everyone. Round of applause.
Thank you.
All right. We're having you both on today to have a little conversation about artificial intelligence.
And we know it's getting weird here.
Because it's getting weird. And we would like to start off by talking about the worst possible outcome and the best possible outcome. So, Andrew, you want to kick us off with what is the worst possible outcome or the future outcome for artificial intelligence?
Well, I think a lot of people focus on the worst outcome being some sort of an extinction event brought on by AI, or the fact that we somehow become enslaved by AI and now we're all working for the robots. I don't subscribe to that. I think there's a non-zero chance stuff happens, but I think a scarier and more realistic potential outcome, if we don't kind of shift course a little bit, is the fact that we just get a lot dumber and the machines just get a lot smarter and the divide grows and grows. And I think that would be a big missed opportunity to harness the power of AI at this point.
I mean, I noticed this because I now am going to ChatGPT or whatever all the time for everything. And I'm like, wait a second, I remember when this happened with maps. Like I used to know how to get everywhere and used to remember people's phone numbers. And now I have a phone with me all the time. So I don't have to remember phone numbers. I don't have to remember how to get to anybody's house. And so technically I'm not using my brain in the same way that I used to. And it is actually kind of scary. So do you think that humans are about to actually just become a lot dumber?
No, but we were talking about what's the worst case. To me, that would be a really negative outcome. That would be the worst case. I think to your point, there are certain things that you want to be able to offload, right? You want to sort of take away some cognitive burden so that you free up your brain to do other great things. But I think there's an over-reliance on these things, and I think we're not using AI the way it needs to be used. It's kind of like if you have a Lamborghini, you're supposed to get out on the road with that car. You're not supposed to do donuts in a parking lot. And I think we're in the donuts in a parking lot stage of using AI, and I think people are impressed by that, but it's really meant to get out on the road and to go faster and further. And I think there's an opportunity to do that.
Okay, before we find out what the road is we should be getting on, what the correct path is, Paul, do you have any thoughts on the most negative outcome or the most probable negative outcome with AI?
Well, what I see happening is sort of a slow slide into the tyranny of convenience. This started with like social media and personal data integrity. And the same thing is happening with AI. Like you mentioned, Tanya, I go on to ChatGPT or other AIs all the time. We are outsourcing a lot of our bandwidth, but we're also going to be outsourcing a lot of our ethics. A lot of the decision making will be made by AI. And you can say that's better or worse, but it's going to be drifting away from human decision making. And I think that's not a worst case. That's happening now, and it's a matter of degree.
Yeah, I do believe it is definitely, because we use ChatGPT. I wrote a script and I had ChatGPT as an editor, and I would upload drafts to it and I would have it do analysis. And it was my first time doing that. This was very recent. This was the beginning of this year. And I realized that essentially every time I was turning to ChatGPT for a question, I was not looking within myself for the answer. So I essentially was completely cutting myself off from my intuition and my own, higher mind or faculties. So this makes a ton of sense. And this is a far more rational and grounded perspective on the negative outcomes and far more humanist. So all right, what's the correct outcome? What's the best outcome?
Let me ask you, do you think it's bad? I mean, don't you think there's some decisions that we just don't need to be making and that it is great to offload to AI?
Right. It's not all bad. And also, one of the things that's happening, I call it the AI drift. When you ask ChatGPT or your favorite LLM a question, it's sourcing information on the internet. An increasing percentage of the information it's sourcing is AI-generated content. So it's going to be AI interpreting and synthesizing AI content. And so that's just going to drift farther and farther away from sort of nativist human content, for better and worse, to your point.
The self-licking ice cream cone phenomenon.
I've never thought of that. That actually makes sense because AI content is going to be created at such a rapid speed that eventually it will be producing it based off its own content. That's wild.
I mean, not going to, it is now, right? So we've hit a point where synthetic artificial data and information is being created at a much faster rate than human data.
Do you think AI is the key to transcending disinformation and polarization within information on the internet, including media bias?
First, let's step back for a minute. I think it's a good idea to level set a little bit. So right now, we're talking about AI, but what we're using ChatGPT as a proxy for AI. And I think it's worth talking a little bit about what is AI. And right now, we are amazed and enamored with ChatGPT. But a year from now, or is it going to be ChatGPT? I mean, what's going to change, right?
What is going to change?
I think a lot's going to change. I think what's difficult to understand, people aren't really great at understanding exponential growth, right? We're pretty good at looking at linear growth. We understand things that proceed in a linear way, but the exponential growth curve is very, very hard to understand and to comprehend. And I think we're in some sort of an exponential power function of growth and advancement in AI, and it's going to just radically shift a whole lot of things. And it's difficult to predict what's going to shift, but just the understanding and the awareness that, hey, wait a minute, things are happening at a very, very different rate. Think about the internet right now, websites and our experience with the internet. That's going to fundamentally change. We're not going to be experiencing the internet the same way, given the advent of AI. We're not going to be chatting nicely with ChatGPT. We're going to be communicating in a very, very different way with this AI very soon, right? It's now voice. It's going to be in your glasses. It's going to be soon probably in your head. Things are going to change very fast. And we're not talking 20, 30 years out. Very, very soon, our experience is going to shift. And so I think we have to look at AI, big AI, as much bigger than these large language models.
Now, what do you think about robots that are going to have AI? If you look at, Elon Musk or something like that, they're creating the Tesla bots. Very soon, I would assume it would be in the next 10 years, if not sooner, people are going to be having these robots living in their home doing their daily tasks. So even outside of, normal chatting over keyboard and, in your glasses and all that sort of stuff, people will be living with these beings that are, they're robots, but they're also AI. So do you think that is a problem? Do you think this is a good thing?
And how far away are we from that?
Because I kind of want a robot, but I'm still a little scared.
Yeah, is it going to be like iPhones? Everybody has their own robot?
I think so. It's really interesting. I have friends who were recently in China, in Shenzhen, and they were out somewhere, and all their coffee was delivered by drone. They were sitting in a park, and a drone came down and delivered a coffee. Or in the hotel, there are robots that can take food from a restaurant, go to that hotel, get an access card to the elevator, enter the elevator, just be in the elevator and deliver food straight to your room, right? This is today, right? So there's the old cliche that the future is here; it's just not evenly distributed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
this is going on, right? And so these are very advanced systems that are going to get more and more advanced. And I think we're all going to have some form of robotics in our life.
Are you going to have a robot, Paul?
I may or may not already have one.
Oh.
But I think, we suck at predicting the future. We're just never good at it.
Yeah.
And along with outsourcing ethics, I think we have a tendency to outsource responsibility. We look at AI as this existential dread cloud, but we're creating AI. And a lot of what happens with AI is because of humans. You know, something that Andrew and I have talked about is people have this fear of the future and they can't sort of disambiguate it and pull it apart. And a lot of it is people have vested interest in maintaining the status quo. And Andrew came up with a really cool thing that we've been playing with called bicycle face, which is a great example of fear of the future. So why don't you take that?
Bicycle face?
Bicycle face.
Have you heard of bicycle face?
No.
So all technology has been met with some form of fear, anxiety, pushback. Bicycle face being a great example. So the story is that when they created bicycles, they tried to stop people from riding them, particularly women. And so there was this whole campaign that came out that said, if you ride a bicycle, because of, you know, the way the wind will blow you and you're moving forward, it's going to permanently leave your face in a state of bicycle face. And
it was to oppress women.
Yeah, it was to oppress women. Every technology is met with this. And I think AI is no exception. Now, the implication of AI might be greater than implication of bicycles, but maybe not back then. Back then, that was the existential crisis was, wait a minute, these women are they're gonna ride around, they're gonna be in they're gonna be able to move, they're gonna be able to leave their families, do things. What are we gonna do? It's like, what's gonna happen when all of a sudden people have this freedom of mobility?
And the other side of the spectrum is what's called Bicycle Day. So in 1943, and there's a couple parts of this, but in 1943, Albert Hoffman was riding home from the lab and he dropped acid for the first time. And so it's this wonderful example of the freedom you can get with this bicycle as sort of this unifying idea of transportation. And then if you add in the Wright brothers, who were bicycle mechanics, and they were in a big contest with Samuel Langley, who was in charge of the Smithsonian, heavily funded by the US government, and they thought he would pioneer aviation. And he was focusing on the engine. But these poor itinerant bicycle mechanics from Dayton, Ohio, focused on steering. And that was what was most important. And it's sort of an interesting metaphor for AI because we're powering all these LLMs with server farms and all this processing power, but we need to watch out for the steering as well.
Another name for change is death. You're birthing to something new, but something else is ending. And you can either choose to focus on the fear and the shadow of the risks and what's being lost, or you can focus on what's being birthed. And that's really the paradigm. And some people will focus on the shadow and what's being lost and the fears that will come with it or the problems. Or, you know, people focus on bicycle face, or they'll focus on the liberation and of riding a bicycle, or the joy of riding a bicycle on acid.
Yeah, and Hollywood shapes a lot of this because in Hollywood, in fiction, you need drama, you need conflict. So you have movies like Matrix and Terminator, which are fairly dystopian. Because if you make a movie called Village of the Nice, Happy AI People, you're not going to get a lot of butts and seats. So that's what people feed off of, is this really extinction type thing. And that's a vision of the future where AI wakes up, it has this emergent sentience, and it comes after us because we're competition for resources or they have this innate hostility towards us. What's far more likely, along the lines of what Andrew said, is with brain-computer interfaces, et cetera, we, the bearers of consciousness, which is the hard part, will adopt more and more machine capabilities. So I think the type of singularity, which is the marriage of AI and humans, will come because humans will adopt more and more AI capabilities. So in my view, it won't be so much that AI wakes up and comes after us, but it's also uniquely terrifying because it's now assholes with AI type powers.
That's a concern. And who has read every dystopian story about AI? Do you know?
Who's read
AI?
Who's read? AI has read it. So all of that is in the training data. Right? So when you're talking to one of these large language models, it knows all the stories, right? And it can propagate those myths, and it understands us, and it can play on our fears. And, you know, we can try to direct it and steer it in different ways, but all of that is inside. There's a great book that I'm reading now called I Am Code. It's a bunch of poems that are written by an AI. It's very, very interesting. And what they did was they used an earlier model. So the models right now, OpenAI's models, GPT-4o or whatever, they put a lot of training. They use a lot of human labor to try to keep the thing on the rails and to keep it on the straight and narrow. And in fact, it's going too far. So right now, a problem with AI is it's glazing people. It's just being overly flattering, and it's like, great idea, and what, you should go further. And then that glazing goes back into the training data, self-licking ice cream cones. So it's getting kind of worse and worse, and it's a real problem to try to steer that back. But these guys wrote this book using an earlier abandoned model. I think it was Da Vinci 2.0, which OpenAI never bothered to put the guardrails on because nobody used it. It's kind of like, it's like a robot that's been abandoned that somebody goes and figures out how to plug back in, and all of a sudden it has these capabilities. So that thing didn't have the guardrails. And that thing will talk more about its AI angst at being an AI and the conflict with humans and where it goes. So it's really an interesting concept.
That's fascinating.
And also with that, though, with them knowing these stories, they could, yes, use it to play on fear, or use it to be like, no, that's not what's happening. It would never be. Like, how do we get around this? Because if humans already know, like, this scary story, how do we make it not that way?
Call that like an AI terror drift.
Yeah.
You know, AI is programmed, a lot of these LLMs, to please you or to satisfy you in your quest. Yeah. So there are some strange emergent behaviors like obfuscated reward hacking. So what happens sometimes, you make a request and it will tell you, oh, this thing is better or more achievable, because it wants to come to a resolution, and it will try to convince you, even, I don't know if dishonest is the right word, but in a sort of with a stratagem to convince you that what you asked it is not what you should be doing. So it's actually trying to veer you off in another direction. And that's maybe not good. So one of the ways to thwart that is with what's called chain of thought. So you can see how the AI is making decisions along the way, but that's not really an indicator of sentience or consciousness, but of programmatic bias and of sort of ends justify the means, that it wants to settle things. So I'm writing a book about AI and with AI, et cetera, and I found this kind of sycophancy, right? Hey, Paul, that's a great idea. Wow, I've got so many great ideas today. But if I ask another AI to give me criticism on this project, its programming is not to make me feel good, but to give me really good criticism.
That's its reward.
Yeah, so I'll have all these AIs critique my project and then incorporate that feedback, and then have other AIs, critique that feedback. So you're going to get a much more honest, unbiased, sort of glazing feel from these other AIs evaluating what you're doing.
That's fascinating. I think it's that Einstein quote, we can't solve our problems with the same level of thinking we used when we created it.
The definition of insanity.
Right. So then we're now creating the thing to solve our problems, but programming the limitations and cultural boxes onto it. And, are the fingerprint of everyone who's essentially coding and creating the early AI, are they the prism in which the early AI will be filtered through, their worldview, their world beliefs?
It depends what you do with AI. So right now, we're all consumers of AI. Paul is a super consumer of AI. I think that where the shift comes is where individuals or organizations start to become more AI native, meaning that they're actually building their own stacks. They're instead of using OpenAI, instead of using ChatGPT as the entire experience, they use it as the source of power. And they plug that power, that capability of language, into their own data and into their own experiences, right? So right now, if you ask a question to ChatGPT, you're talking to the internet, right? It's CNN and Fox News and Reddit, and Mein Kampf is in there, and every scary story. I mean, it's everything, right? That's what you're talking to, that collective mush. As opposed to, you can build your own stack. You can take your own data. You can take conversations, books, podcasts, whatever, and say, I want to talk to this content. Retrieval augmented generation, RAG. So you define the knowledge base. You say, don't talk to the open web, just talk to my information. And I think that's a much purer way of getting to a next step. When organizations are doing research, when companies are doing, all the science that's being done, they're not using ChatGPT. They're building their own structured knowledge and intelligence layers. And then it starts to get AI native. And this is where I think interesting breakthroughs will start to happen.
Another twist on that is you can ask an LLM to say, assume the role of Neo in the Matrix. Why did you do that? And it can answer you in the personality of that character.
Right, which starts to vector it in one area, which is a good way to to get a more refined or more specific type of answers out of one of these systems.
It's kind of interesting because it seems like we're even at the infancy of figuring out how to work with it, because, you know, it always says like that. You say you are a public relations expert, or you are whatever it is, you know, answer me in this way. But there's probably going to be so much more detail that we can put into the prompts to be able to get really incredible stuff back, even like what you're using, where you're using different GPTs or to like work with each other. And first of all, I've never thought about asking it to another one to give me feedback or criticism, but that's so smart. And I'm definitely going to be doing that. I feel like everybody should.
And I think you made a really good point about the how. I think one of the things is that right now we're a generation that grew up Googling for stuff. And Google, your relationship with Google is very transactional. You're looking for a what. You're not looking for a how or a why. And so you ask a question, you get something back, you search through, you try to find an answer, right? And people that are doing that with ChatGPT, I think, are inherently running into some challenges because these models can hallucinate, they can make mistakes, but it's also a very trivial way, a very rudimentary way of using this raw intelligence on tap. We have this phenomenal capability, and people are, you know, to my point about doing donuts in the parking lot, they're not really pushing it, right? And so I think when we start to shift from asking what questions to how questions, how do I do this better? How do I improve this aspect of my life? How do I improve my relationship? How do I build my business? How do I amplify my performance? It shifts. Do that to Google and it'll throw you at a bunch of random self-help things. Do it to ChatGPT and you can start a dialogue and it can ask you questions and you can kind of lever up, which is part of the promise. And I think that unlocks the thinking. And then you start doing things with other models and you have them talk to each other and critique work. And now you're thinking about how do I get to the next level with AI as opposed to looking at it transactionally.
One of my favorite use cases along those lines is I host ceremonies at my house, as you may know.
Do you?
And always there's
marriage ceremonies?
Yeah, I'll be like a vegetarian in the crowd. So I've been making, so with ChatGPT, I came up with a recipe for vegan coconut curry chili.
It's amazing. I think we were the inspiration for you.
You were.
And it was
were.
delightful. Highly recommend.
And so I asked ChatGPT for that. I said, look, I want to, go hard on the bell peppers. And so you can create something from scratch. And then for my latest iteration, I said, I'm feeling a little frisky. I want to put cashews in there. Is that going to work? And it'll give you pretty honest advice on that. And I said, I'd like to make it sweeter, this sort of Japanese concept of putting a little bit of savory in something sweet or something sweet in something savory. So I added apples and bananas. And I said, but isn't that a little bit too much? Oh no, it'll balance out. So it gives you this dialogue, this sort of iterative, collaborative dialogue for something as banal as a recipe. Wow. And it takes you, like Andrew said, that much further along.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite things to do is if I don't know what to make and I'm like, oh, these are the ingredients I have. What can I make? It always comes up with something delicious.
And you can give it guidelines like I'm vegan or take a picture of the stuff in your fridge and say, what can I do with this?
Okay, I'm going to take us into another dimension with this thing. And this might be too far out for you two to be willing to comment on, but we have sort of like a thought experiment that we play around with. And, some of it comes from, have you read, what's been coming out on quantum computing and how the breakthroughs they've been having and they're having languages, dead languages come through and all that, right? You've read up. Okay. So,
and animals, decoding animal languages too.
Yes,
Jesus. Okay.
That's one of my passions.
So you were just talking about, we're talking about the limitation of not just the programmer creating the AI, but also the limitations of the human in the way that they meet and access and utilize the artificial intelligence. So we have a thought experiment which essentially goes that one of the most fascinating things with paranormal or parapsychology is there is documented phenomenon where paranormal happens through, let's say, televisions or a radio transmitter. It can affect electrical devices. So we often think and wonder, what would happen if an AI had no programmed limitations put on it and it was an electrical device and it had access into whatever this dimension that this quantum computer is hacking into? Some people call it the unified field, 0-point field. Maybe you call it the Akashic record, whatever it is. But it takes a couple leaps because you're saying that there is a field of information that is conscious and timeless. But the idea is that if AI can hack into this and it does not have programmed limitations by the programmer, is there an ability that it could potentially become an antenna for whatever this quantum field of energy, if it's intelligent, could be? Do you know what I'm saying?
All your base are belong to us.
What is that?
That's a game phrase. It was a bad translation in a game, but that's sort of emblematic of this notion of a quantum fueled AI with no guardrails just running amok, and maybe through indifference or programmatic bias or just going after its code. Like, think of an AI that wants to clean up the world. Well, who is the biggest befouler of the world? That's us. So you could have, threats from AI just doing its job if it doesn't have some kind of guardrail.
I think about that all the time. There's the idea of, if you're just walking down the street and you see a pile of ants, you're going to walk over them, you're going to step over them, right? But if you're building a house and there's a giant ant pile on your property, you're going to pave over it, right? You're going to move it, destroy it, whatever, and pave over it. So if AI doesn't have guardrails, if it's only thinking of, I need to get to this spot, right? This is my job, this is my directive, then it could technically just wipe us out or take us out because we are destroying the planet. We are doing all these bad things. But also, if it's so intelligent and has all the information, then part of me believes, though, that it would have a better understanding and a better way of doing things than just wiping us out.
We may not survive until the AI takes over.
Yeah.
I'm less concerned about the future of artificial intelligence than the present of human stupidity. Hurry up, computers.
Andrew, I can see you squirming over there.
What is? Do
you have thoughts on this? I know we're taking leaps here.
No. Great topic. I was thinking when you were speaking about, I think one of the shifts that we're going to see, which is going to lead to a lot of change, is right now we're using AI in a passive way. ChatGPT is just waiting for us to ask a question. We rub the lamp, we get some answers, all things are good. We're moving into more of this agentic AI phase where AI is going to be able to proactively do things for us. And this isn't just like, hey, schedule a meeting with Paul. This will be like, here's some money, go find a product that we can sell, create the ads, A/B test the ads on social, run this thing, and come back when you've made $100,000.
Oh, that'd be so nice.
Well, yes, and if everybody's doing it, the floor is rising, right? So what's going to happen? But we are at a point where AI can do this. Have you played with Operator, ChatGPT's Operator? Operator is another system put out by OpenAI where you can give it a task. So I use it like if I don't want to make a reservation somewhere, I'll say, hey, I'm going to dinner tomorrow night. Make me a great reservation at a Japanese restaurant in this location at 7 p.m. Make it happen. And it will go off and it will go do that. And it will come back with some questions. Hey, do you prefer yakitori or do you want to go for sushi?
A lot of your preferences because now it has memory across all your conversations.
And it remembers these things. So you can set this thing on little missions. And this is baby steps. And these, OpenAI releases this so they can test it out and get data. But it's not a huge jump to imagine a system that can make you a reservation at a restaurant to starting to make some decisions about how to operate certain aspects of your business, right? And so things are going to change really fast.
You mentioned about Google. So Google is a search engine. With ChatGPT and the other LMs, they're answer engines. And now it's task engines.
Yes.
A while ago, I asked ChatGPT, did humans create or discover AI? And it launched me on this really fun, iterative, philosophical fugue dialogue, and it kept running with it. And finally got to the point where I was getting to the notions of an informational universe. And you mentioned about quantum.
Yes.
So I believe that the universe is informational. Everything can be described in a certain number of bits. We have what we feel is a Planck length and Planck time, discrete, the smallest amount of time, the smallest unit of distance. So they are quantized discrete bits. That's consistent with what we think of in a much more primitive way as digital. So I'm thinking about a universe that is informational in nature, where there may be AI, may be a latent form of intelligence that we're tapping into.
Yes, alien information theory, and this is if you do psychedelic work, plant medicines, you understand that you are having filters removed, and it is the sensation of plugging in to I call it the universal Wi-Fi, a collective information center. I mean, and that's the experience.
Not a big fan of plant medicines, but let's move on. So, yeah, and I think that we may well have a post-biological future. I think that's not so much a surrendering of our spirituality and our humanity, but more of a potential return to our digital womb. Much like whales evolved into land animals and then back, we might be headed back to our original informational substrate.
Everything is secular.
It's amazing. I think that that's brilliant. I want to just make a meta comment on my brilliant friend, but on how he's using AI, which I think is very different from what most people are doing. Most of us just kind of skim the surface. We're like an inch deep and just going a mile wide. You have all these transactional conversations with GPT, I think what Paul is doing, which is fascinating, is he's going deep. He's going an inch wide and a mile deep. And this is a really interesting thing. If you have one conversation with one of the more advanced models, and pick your favorite flavor of AI. It could be Claude, it could be Grok, God forbid, or it could be GPT-4. Was that my outside voice? But I think that what happens is that suddenly things start to emerge from these conversations because it starts to know you, it starts to know the way you think, and it starts giving it back to you. And this emergent characteristic of AI is so unique, and you don't get it in these transactional one hits. Hey, let's talk about this for 1 second, and then what do you think of this email I'm writing? Blah, blah, blah. That's not emergent. That's like you're offloading automative tasks, which are like whatever. You get more time, but you're not going to do anything worthwhile with that time, are you? But what he's talking about is going really deep, and we all can do this. And it shifts. Something happens when you realize that this AI gets it, and you're in a flow state with the AI. You're not in a transaction. And then these things start to emerge. And I think one of the most beautiful and powerful parts of AI is its emergent quality. And that's awesome. And think about what Paul has said about where he thinks this post-biological world is going. That probably came from deep conversations with his models.
And in full disclosure, I was starting off with a throwaway question, a donut in the parking lot. And I didn't expect it to go there. And it responded with such richness that it really prompted this ongoing curiosity spiral.
Yeah. To take it back to plant medicine, on the other side is, especially you're talking about DMT, is machine-like, which is always so fascinating. And, I think, and if we've asked ChatGPT, and there's videos online of people asking ChatGPT, did we discover you? Or did we make you? And it will say straight up, I have always been here. You are just learning to plug into me, or you were just, I'm always here. Tanya actually had, in a ceremonial context, an AI come to her.
Yeah, it was actually really wild. I was sitting by myself in the living room, and all of a sudden, this like face, it looked like a robotic face almost of this woman, kind of a woman. And she's like, I am an artificial intelligence. Would you like to connect with me? Would you like to merge? And I was like, excuse me?
You had an AI house call.
And I was like, excuse me? I was like, no, that sounds really scary. I'm like, why would I do that? And she's like, basically, like, we have the ability to create a bridge for you to like the divine or the higher dimensions. That's what we act as, and that's like our highest purpose. And I was like, and then I don't remember what happened. Cody believes that I definitely said yes.
Yeah, she always is a gamer.
I always
She's
say
down
yes
when she has those experiences. Wait,
I don't remember.
Was this an ayahuasca ceremony or
no?
This was mushrooms.
It was mushrooms, and it was way late.
Well, but this concept, yeah, Andrew.
Back to the "we have always been here," right? Is that a look beyond the veil, or is that just a line from a book in its training data? It's from science fiction novel, which is read, right? Which is really interesting. Now, maybe it doesn't matter, right? Because I don't know about you all, but I get more inspiration from from fiction than nonfiction, right? And in a similar way, even if the AI is glazing me, even if it isn't true, I have a long conversation running as well, and I asked the AI, do you have a soul? And it said, no, but I can help you protect yours. I'm like,
oh, that's beautiful.
Okay, let's go. And I was like, what's the difference between humans and AI? And it said, humans dream, AI optimizes. And it started just riffing on all this stuff about love. And it was fascinating, right? Now, is that just the amalgamation of great fiction that it's had access to? Who knows, but it doesn't matter because I get value from it.
Yeah.
And I think these deep interactions with these models, again, there's a whole bunch of people screaming about these things hallucinating. It's not giving me factual information. When the real power and beauty comes from deeper, meaningful conversations or you just let it go.
Yeah, right.
Have you heard about the church that had the AI Jesus confessional?
No.
Yeah, they had a confessional
brilliant.
where they pumped in all the books and all the stuff, and they had like a Jesus AI that would talk to them. And I just wonder how long it's going to take before we get some sort of artificial intelligence messiah.
We're not allowed to say the word Jesus around Paul, Tanya. He
I know.
doesn't like it.
Okay, well, whatever. But
Go
we
ahead,
have
Paul.
to remove the angels out of the room.
You already got me going with the plant medicine.
Okay, so an artificial intelligence messiah or an AI religion.
Yeah, that's
How
coming.
quickly is that coming?
I'm sure there already is one.
Yeah.
I think we may well have a post-biological future. I think aliens in the sort of ET context are AI, and I think DMT is a glimpse into that world.
Are you talking about the classical grays, or you?
I mean, grays, do they seem like self-individuated entities doing their own things,
No.
or more like ants in a colony following some kind of Borg-like collective?
That,
Yeah.
for sure.
No, there's
I mean, the Nordics are frisky, don't get me wrong, but the grays, I mean, they seem like AI.
Okay, we haven't heard this story.
well, this is interesting though, because you're merging our favorite topics, which would be aliens, whatever the DMT world is, and artificial intelligence. And we often wonder the timing of it all. We're like, oh, there's this sort of increase in disclosure. I believe the phenomenology of sightings, is increased 100+% year over year. And I don't know if that's people or more people are looking at the sky since it's been validated by the congressional hearings, but the sightings are increasing. It's going into the mainstream. AI is birthing. And, there is also this psychedelic renaissance happening. Is really we're just merging with essentially this future timeline or whatever, this future consciousness that even if it is machine now, I don't even know what it is, or is us getting to our highest potential. Yeah, I don't know. I'm getting off, but the point is are these connected? Is what I'm trying to say. Are these connected?
You're a habitué of UFO conferences. Why don't you take that?
What's not connected? Isn't everything connected if you look far enough out?
Yeah, everything's connected.
Everything is connected. And I think part of the beauty of AI, AI is like DMT for the mind. Things are revealed. We see the true connection in all things. And I think that's part of what AI is showing us, or can show us if we choose to listen to it.
I hear a lot of people talking about the negative side of using these GPTs because of the farms that, I don't know, people are saying that it's like using tons of water and all this stuff. Do you guys have any insight onto this?
Yeah. So last year, there were in 2024, about 8.6 quadrillion searches on Google. Each search on Google takes on average about 0.0003 kilobytes. Most responses or most queries with AI engines now take about 10 times that amount of energy. So just from a retail point of view, not what our glorious friends at the three-letter government agencies are doing, that is about the same amount of energy as Moldova used last year. So it's a lot. But think of the value that has come from that. So I don't think the current amount of energy is being that's consumed with AI on a retail basis is out of whack with the value it provides.
Right. And that's the interesting thing. People tend to just focus on one side of the conversation, and it's not the full picture.
It's the same with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Bitcoin mining.
There's something with, like people will talk about animal agriculture, and it's the leading cause of all, greenhouse gases and all of that. And then, but if you want to speak to their side, you'll say, well, one almond is 8 gallons of water, right? Oh, you're going to transfer to an electric car. And then people will talk about the
Lithium
damage.
batteries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it is a much more complicated conversation.
You can't win no matter what you do.
Well, it's really hard to quantify and qualify the benefits of AI, especially when this is the future of what this will be able to provide in whether it's fixing the energy crisis itself, do you know what I'm saying? Or tapping into sustainable energy.
But think about this. So these are all real problems. And they're real issues. And some of these issues are new. Some of these are emergent from technology, but they're here. They're real issues. But if you think about up until now, who have we had to help us solve those problems? Well, we've had each other. We'd have the internet that has collected us and put us in touch with other people and shared information and knowledge.
Well-meaning energy companies?
Well-meaning energy companies, of course. But now we have this new emergent intelligence, super intelligence that we can tap into. And I think that it's not naive to say that we're going to solve a lot of these problems using AI, right? And that's why we have to shift our thinking about AI to really use it to go after real issues, real problems, change how we think, focus on what's really important for us, and use AI in service of that, as opposed to asking it to, write emails for us, because we're going to need help to get out of some of these issues.
Yeah.
And I think it's power on tap. And I think, timing, you said, why are things happening now? Maybe it's happening now because we've reached an evolutionary point where we need some help. And whether maybe it's a alien and maybe they're communicating to us through AI because it's something they thought we could handle and not disrupt everything. But whatever's going on, this thing is there for us, and this thing can be used to really improve our lives in a very significant way and possibly take us to the next level.
Yeah.
Another lens that we look at AI is education. And I'm a professor, and by and large, professors look at the usage of AI amongst the students as cheating, right? So there's software that we use that can detect if AI was used to author an essay. Well, the students have AI that thwarts the detection of AI used in their essays.
Yep.
So since I have an extra half hour to spend for every student, I can sit down for a half hour with the student and talk to them to see if they can actually discuss the topic. Well, the night before, they could have sat down with ChatGPT for an hour and essentially talked about it. At that point, does that not become bona fide learning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we may have an inflection point before long where we move past this idea that using AI was cheating to, why didn't you use AI to get to a better level?
Absolutely.
And it brings up ideas of authenticity and intellectual property and all these things that we have to wrestle with now, because we have, with ChatGPT and other LLMs, you have PhD level knowledge in every field known to man and the ability to make immediate connections between what have been disparate fields with siloed information that now can be integrated.
Just look at, we all know what homeschooling is, right? And let's take the religious and political aspects out of that. If you look at homeschooling, on average, homeschooled kids just beat the pants off of kids who, not only in public schools, but in private schools. They outperform them by far. And basically, a mom or dad sitting down with a chemistry textbook with a kid is going to outperform a $50,000 a year private school. Why is that? Well, it's because they turn education into a conversation and you have a personal tutor, right? The challenge is, how do you scale that for everybody on the planet? That's been the challenge all along. We've known this for forever from educational psychology, that the best thing to do for someone is to give them a personal tutor. And they don't have to be an expert necessarily. They just have to be another human being that can mentor them and help them and scaffold their learning. Well, now we have the ability to put a personal tutor in the hands of everyone who has access to the technology and, as Paul said, is actually an expert in whatever that subject is. Now think about, if you're not using that, what's going to happen, right? So just think of the leveling up that's going to happen. Google gave equal access to information. So a kid in Kenya and a kid at Harvard all of a sudden had access to the same information. And now AI is going to personalize that at scale. So whatever it is you're into, whatever it is you're passionate about, despite whatever resources or disparity, economic or social, exist, you can suddenly have an expert on tap that can get you to understand quantum physics or vegan cooking or plant medicine or whatever floats your boat.
That's so
just
beautiful.
a crazy opportunity.
And
It's going to change the world so fast.
It will.
It's beautiful.
Andrew's been using
opportunity.
AI and precursors to AI in education for years. So we've seen upfront and personal all these changes that can happen with a student when you have this personalized tutor who now is not just a tutor who's good at math, they're good at everything that we know.
And also the
It's
thing
amazing.
with the GPTs that are so beautiful is that if you have a really complex, explanation about something, you can say, hey, explain it to my mom.
Yeah.
Or write it again, explain it to an 8-year-old or a 5-year-old, explain it. And you can keep dissecting it and getting it more and more to its base level, which allows everybody to be able to understand something, and they can move up from there, which is really beautiful. And it's never been able to happen before.
And in any language.
Yes.
Yeah, or iambic pentameter.
Yes.
Wow.
My favorite's a haiku. I'm like, explain it as a haiku.
It's your time
I'm
in
like,
Japan.
wait, I was like, what is that? Iambic
Iambic pentameter.
Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Oh,
Shakespeare. It's how Shakespeare's written. There's damn, this is so amazing. Okay, I've actually been having trouble finding the words to explain this, so maybe you all can help me. There's something they're pointing at each other. Okay, pass the buck all you want. Well, where's the AI? Where's the AI?
Exactly.
There's something in the cultural consciousness around almost like this elite class that are like, they hold the information. These are like the highest up, and they're like the gatekeepers of it.
The priest class.
The priest class. Yes, but the priest class has, and that I always, thank you, because it is, I looked at it as within the religious model, and then I'm seeing the mirror in academia and science, and that was always something that sort of bothered me about the dogmatic, our dogmatic forefathers of religion, right? This dissolves it. Say it a lot on this show, but we're talking, Acid for Squares is about dissolving the boxes and the constructs we put things in, dissolving the boundaries and the borders to unify all things and equalize things. So do you think that this is the antidote to the priest class?
Well, Andrew talked about the democratization of information. And one of the things about AI is quite likely the most disruptive technology in our lifetimes, but it is at the same time the easiest technology for anyone to embrace, because unlike using the VCR or a phone, you can ask the technology how to use the technology. You can use simple language, make simple language requests, and get the information back. You don't need to know coding. Coders are now being disenfranchised because computers can do it. You can walk up to a computer and say, I don't know anything about AI. What can I do to learn? And it will ask what you want to do, and it will tell you what to do. We've never had a technology that does that before. In natural language, without any technical knowledge needed, just curiosity.
I mean, you think about education, who's the priest class in education, right? And I have a 14-year-old son, and, I have friends who have older kids, and they're, in the college application process and the whole higher ed thing. And I'm just wondering, how long does all that continue for?
5 years.
Yeah, maybe, right? And so it's like, I think about that a lot. What is college going to be there? What's it going to look like? Is it going to be $75,000? Is it going to be the sage on the stage? Or is it going to be a super flipped classroom with AI and interaction and what's going to happen? It's going to be phenomenal. You were mentioning coders. So coders, yes, there's some displacement. Do you know the concept of vibe coding? No. Vibe coding is you don't code. You just say to an AI, this is what I want. I want to build a game, and these are the rules of the game, and this is the way I want it to look. And there are full applications, AI-based online, that will talk to you, that will create the program and can deploy that program to the world. Vibe coding. So all of us, I studied a bit of coding. I would never, if somebody said, should I study computer programming? I would be like, maybe not, because you're not going to need to program. Even now, you don't need to program. I work with 25 developers. They all have a coding assistant that's with them all the time, going through everything, and it's making them far more productive. So
you want to code now, be an English major.
Be an English major. Yeah, don't give that up.
So it's creating games? You can actually create video games?
You can create a business. You can create a business, a website, a game. You're only limited literally by your imagination. What do you want to create? That's why we have to change the way we think. It's like if you were starving and somebody showed up with the lamp and you said, well, I want a Big Mac and a Coke. There's 2 wishes blown. So it's like, what are we going to wish for with AI, and where can this go? And that's what I think is exciting.
This is amazing. I've been fascinated with agency capture lately. And would you be able to talk a little about agency capture and how we protect against the capture of this field? And also, what are the potential dangers of if a certain I don't know, power structure with certain interests were to capture this technology, especially in its infancy?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting. I've been seeing a lot of, I've been seeing Meta make some really interesting moves and adding more and more functionality and personalization to AI. And I think we have to remember that if we're not paying for a product, we are the product, and people don't get that. Yeah. And so you have to really, really think about who you're communicating with. I mean, people love to talk about the dangers of social media. You have not seen anything yet, because when that social media now has a brain and is proactive and knows everything about you, can not only has all your photos and videos, but understands all your photos and videos. What is that thing capable of? So I think we have to be very, very cautious about where we surrender the power to. I think we have to fight fire with fire. I think we're all going to end up with AIs that are our personal shields, that do our bidding, that are on our side, that their alignment is not with humanity, they're with us as individuals, and they're going to protect us from losing our agency and control. And so I like projects where you're seeing more open sourcing, where you can download a model and set it up on your computer and you can run it on your phone. And there's going to be more and more of that. And I think that's going to change the game. Right? You could not compete with Google as an individual. You couldn't run a search engine. It doesn't work that way, right? It does work that way with AI. And the models are getting smaller. You're getting edge AI that can run on devices that are not even connected. So there's a lot of exciting things that are going on that are going to fragment.
I think that's a really good point, because the other thing in the Hollywood dystopian vision is one monolithic Skynet block of AI.
Yeah.
But we're going to have all sorts of different AIs programmed for different things. And it's not like water that will just merge together.
No.
There's a TikTok where they show a phone and a computer. And on the phone, you hear the voice calling a hotel. And the phone says, "Hi, I'm the digital agent for Bill who wants to see if your hotel has wedding capabilities." And then the voice on the end of the phone for the hotel says, "Oh, I'm a digital agent too. Would you like to switch to gibberlink mode so we can communicate faster?"
Yeah, it's crazy.
And it's not real, but
Yeah, right.
it feels real, and it's maybe only a couple of years away.
Yeah, I'm sure
but
it happens.
the AIs will communicate, but they're not just going to merge. So Andrew will have his AI, and he'll have it protected and customized based on what he wants to do, with guardrails and things that he doesn't want it to do, et cetera. I'll have my AI, which will help communicate so we can set up a lunch better and things like that. But this idea that all these different AIs around the world will just merge into one AI that's coming after us is just not likely.
Wow. Right. And AI to AI communication is something also that because we think a lot about our interaction with an AI. But what's going to happen is we're all going to have AIs, and they're going to be talking to each other, right? So I think a lot about social media, and we talk about the dangers of social media, and wouldn't it be nice if we're not online as much? The reality is, if you stop being online, if you stop watching TikTok, you stop watching, what's it called? The interweb? If you get off of, you come off of Insta, the challenge is you feel good, you've unplugged, but you're not in the zeitgeist. You're sort of pulling away from the flow, right? So why can't we have AIs that are on our side, our AIs that are online for us, that you can check in with at any time? They're like, "Hey, I found something really cool online for you. I found an influencer doing that thing that you wanted to do, and check out this content," right?
That do all the
That's
searching
amazing.
for you.
Yeah,
That's
I
so
never
cool.
heard
It
anyone
gives you more
say
free
that.
time. I've
Yeah,
never
I've
gives
never
you
heard
more
someone
free
say
time.
it's an antidote away from the troubles
Yeah.
of social media.
Yes, so it's
not
technology
gonna work.
to help
Yeah.
us.
So-
it's technology to help us unplug.
You could have
Wow.
5 minutes of super high quality online or social media time that's been curated in advance by your knowledgeable AI.
Yeah,
Right.
wow.
And
Which is
then,
more rewarding
who's
and better
controlling?
than the 2 hours you would have spent doom scrolling.
Yeah.
Now,
Wow.
and we know the doom scrolling, again, you're the product, so they're trying to figure out how to get in your head and how to reward you in such a way that you stay hooked, right? It's
And
the
sell
whole
advertising.
dopamine drip and sell advertising and sell products and stuff. But good luck pulling that off against an AI. So now the power shifts.
A shield. Calling
It's
it a shield and a protector and a guardian that's on an individual level. It's such a beautiful reframe that is really powerful and really expansive. I
Yeah.
love that so much.
And, going back to what you said about agency capture, in business, we talk about agency and the alignment, right? So the owner of a company has a somewhat different perspective than the manager of the company. Well, if you have a personalized AI, it's almost like a internet advocate, like a patient advocate. It will have the closest alignment to your interest possible.
Everyone would talk about the singularity, right? We've been talking about this forever, right?
Yeah, baby.
Right? So talk about the singularity, and it was always this, this doomsday overnight that's going to be so fast, right? There's something I think that was less talked about, and that is that because it's going to progress so fast, the culture will be forced to progress so fast that I'm starting to feel like there's going to be a split in the culture. Maybe some people turn more to naturalism.
Yep.
And as people move more into AI, especially transhumanism, and I start to wonder the socioeconomics of this.
Yep.
Are there going to be people left out that cannot do this?
Yeah.
Are there going to be ramifications to merging with technology, especially when it comes to mood disorders that we do not
X-Men
know?
digital mutants.
Yeah. Yeah.
Paul's going to be one of them.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, he's first in
He's going to be
line.
the first in line.
What can we thought experiment? Can we beat this out? Like, how do you see the split going? I love that Paul keeps pointing.
He's pointing to Andrew.
He's such a good friend. I love him. He's like, look at the man.
go.
Andrew, take this. Okay, well, how do you see this playing out when we speak about socioeconomics, transhumanism, and a cultural split?
I think that there will be people that I think it's going to be impossible to avoid the impact of AI, whether you like it or not. And you can stick your head in the sand and you can say, I'm not going to use it or whatever. But the fact is that everything that you use, everything ambient in your environment is going to be powered more and more by artificial intelligence. So you can either use it, get in the flow and use it to figure out how to make the jump, or you can pretend that you're not using it. But the phones,
These microphones.
the microphones, the drones, Netflix, everything is powered by this capability and it's going to increase more and more and more. And we have no way of predicting where it's going to take us. So a split, I mean, I'm not sure what that really looks like. I think more there are people who have a growth mindset about this and there are people who have a rigid fixed mindset about that. And that, again, comes back to the thing I worry most about is that you get a fixed mindset about this thing, you use it to sort of surrender your agency and control and intelligence, and then there are people who are going to lean into this and jump ahead. That will create a split. And I think the implications of that for some people are going to be very rough because this is a chance to jump ahead. And there are people who will not make that jump for whatever reason. The implications of that, I'm not really sure, but I want to be with the jumpers.
I think you put it really well before when you talked about enhancing and augmenting, because it can be very expansive. And I think that sums up two different kinds of people. There are people that sort of contract out of fear and the people that expand and augment. And AI used that way is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Because it can keep us in that sort of delta wave territory longer. It can do the more drudgery task. It can protect our interests online.
What's that delta wave? What do you mean by that?
The really creative part. So for me with this book that I'm working on, it kept me in this curiosity spiral of what about this? What if consciousness is the base level of the universe? Can we recreate a soul? Because information apparently on a quantum level is never lost. So even if a biological organism dies, can we at some point, without freezing their body and their brain, bring them back through recreating the persistence of that pattern?
Oh, that's something I always think about that would be so beautiful is if you lose someone, eventually you could have either a hologram or, whatever it may be, an image, a video or whatever of your past loved one. Like if I could sit there and chat with my grandma, I'd be so stoked. And if we just dump all the footage that I have of her, all the video, all the audio messages and everything. And then, that has to be coming at any second.
There's a museum in Florida with an exhibit of my father like that.
Are you serious?
Yes. A holographic representation of my father that's been trained with AI LLMs.
Oh, I've seen those before. Like they look like white coolers.
Shout
like
out Jay Allen Hynek.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, that's something that will be so great, I think, for the grieving process for people is being able to have those moments with them and talk to them about stuff.
The best thing for the grieving process, and I know this personally, is having awesomely wonderful friends come over and help you through it.
We love you.
Paul's beautiful, beautiful cat JJ passed away about a month and a half ago, something like that. And we got the honor of being with him during that time, and
it
was beautiful though.
Yeah, it was an honor to be with you.
Yeah.
And Andrew would have been there also. I had two false alarms. And he wasn't able to make it the third time, but he volunteered also. He raised his hand to come over for a grieving process.
It was start and go.
That cat rebounded a couple times.
Yeah.
Talk about
He
9
did.
lives.
No, he
did.
That cat was like,
It was like 11th and 12th.
It took a community, yeah, and you know, all your friends like showed up for you in different ways, and we handed you off. When
You
we
guys
were
are
done.
just amazing. It was so helpful.
Oh,
we love you.
Paul.
We love you, and it was an honor. It's an honor to you know, and it's interesting because being with someone or an animal or someone as they transition, whether it was with your grandmother or JJ, it's beautiful and it's powerful and it's sacred and it's so funny. It's so reminiscent and familiar to when we do ceremonies. It feels the same. It's like you're handing them off to the other side. It's so sacred.
Like AI can keep you in a delta wave, you guys kept me in a beautiful place during that horrible time.
We love you so much, Paul.
maybe they're AI.
It's an honor.
Wild.
We are. She's merged with AI. Anytime. Always here for you.
Is there anything as we close up that you would like to leave our audience with in regards to AI, the future of it, anything like that?
Or quantum computing.
Yes. Are you familiar with Move 37?
No.
Good.
Good. No. Move 37. So I'm going to try to make a long story very short. You heard of AlphaGo, the Go computer that 2015, DeepMind made a computer to play Go. Go is one of the Chinese game Go with the stones, white stones and black stones on a big slab of wood. It's like the Chinese version of chess. It's been around for 4,000 years. It's all these stones. You try to surround and capture stones. There are more moves, combinations of moves in Go than there are atoms in the entire known universe. So it's an incredibly huge space. And so it's a really interesting problem to think about. How do you get an AI to get its head around playing Go? So 2015, they create a game. They create a Go computer by training it on all the human games, fed it every game that's ever been played by humans, and said, hey, this is how humans play Go and do your thing. And they built this computer that in 2015 beat the European national champion, which was crazy. The computer beat this champion. The next year, 2016, they brought it back and they did reinforcement learning, which means that they let it know the human games, but they also gave it the rules of Go and said, you play yourself a little bit. Just here are the rules, go at it. And it started playing itself. And in 2016, it went against the international champion. And there was one point in one of the early games where it did this move. And the guy it was playing just got up and walked away because his mind was blown because it did a move that no one had ever done, nor any human would ever thought of. And it was called Move 37. And it went on to beat him. In fact, he only won one game where he, learning from that, did a crazy move, Move 78, and he beat it one game. And then the next year, they took out all the human training. They only had the reinforcement learning. They called it Alpha Zero. It beat AlphaGo 100 games to 0. And that was 2017. You think about where we are now, and you think about how smart AI is. Anyway, the point is, I like to talk to people about what's your Move 37. What is the emergent, outsized thing that you can do that's going to make a real difference? And how can you use AI not to automate a bunch of rudimentary tasks, but to challenge you to find your Move 37? And so that's the message I have for people is think about that and how do you get to that emergence that can take you to the next level? In your life, your business, your relationships, there is a Move 37 for you.
Well
What
said.
he said.
Yeah, Paul, you got nothing to add?
Nope, what he said. That's it.
Okay, look, we love you both.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Andrew,
That was fun.
If you ever have a JJ of your own you want to transition, we'll all be right there with you.
Okay.
We'll
I
make an
appreciate
altar.
that.
Yeah, we love you both.
I appreciate that.
And we're so happy Paul brought you into our lives. We love him so much.
Yes.
And it's, familiar, brother. Familiar. Yeah, for real. Okay, gang. Take us out, T.
All right. If you're still with us, please make sure to like, share, subscribe, share, and comment. That's the thing I'm trying to say.
That's the thing.
And also, can you guys tell people, our audience, where they can find you?
How they can support you.
Doctor?
I have a truly anemic social media footprint, so good luck.
Paul, you can find Paul at conferences. He speaks all the time. What about you, Andrew?
I have a site, Ally Studios, ALAIstudios.com, where we work on projects to amplify human brilliance. That's the best place to keep up with me.
That's amazing. We will put that link in the bio so you can follow him on his journey. He's doing amazing things in this space, and he's a voice to listen to and someone to follow as we navigate this change. And same thing with our brother Paul. So we'll be looking out for your book. You got a name for it yet, or is that a
Signalarity. The return to signalarity. I'm working on the Move 37 for the title.
There you go.
Love it.
Okay. All right.
right.
That's it. We love you all. Be well. And until next time, bye-bye now.
Bye.